said you were going to ask me questions.
That's when you get to say hello. This is gonna be a shit show. All right.
Hello there.
Welcome to the Huckersberry Lemonade Podcast.
On today's episode,
there are so many questions and so few answers. Not a day goes by where the investigators, survivors, and the victims' families aren't reminded of these brutal murders. 20 years later, they're still seeking justice and closure. June 6, 1993.
5 more have been either shot or stabbed.
After having all the victims bound in duct tape and tied up in dog chains,
the investigators hope to find this killer.
It's a day that changed the small town of Windsor forever.
On June 6, 1993, a man appeared inside of a BBL grocery store in Windsor, North Carolina. It was after closing hours. He was brandishing a handgun. The man ordered the store manager and a cashier to empty the day's earnings into a plastic bag in what appeared to be a robbery. After taking the money, the armed suspect then ordered the 2 employees plus the 4-person floor cleaning crew to the back of the store. After being tied up, the suspect then stacked the employees in 3 piles of 2 people apiece. Then he opened fire. After murdering 3 and severely wounding 2 others, the killer calmly walked out into the quiet night, never to be seen again. Some 29 years later, the killer's identity remains unknown, and investigators continue to work the case. On May 30th, 1993, 1 week prior to the BBL murderers, Audrey Leggett, then 66, was gunned down as she was working the counter at Cherry's Cupboard. She was on the phone with her daughter Judy, just swapping recipes. Judy was told to hold on just for a minute, in which time she heard a click, and that was it. That was the last thing that anyone ever heard from Miss Audrey. They drug her all the way in the back, going to the cooler, and there they took her life. She was shot several times for a couple $100. Customers would eventually find her. Now, this may or may not be related to the BBL suspect, but could there be a connection? A year after the BBL store murders in Windsor, North Carolina, another BBL store was robbed. This store was located in Hertford, North Carolina. The gunman hid in the store until closing. Then he tied up the assistant store manager. The assailant used duct tape and dog leashes, the same items used to tie up the victims in the Windsor store robbery. He fled with an undisclosed amount of cash, and no one was injured. I tell you, this one hits really close to home, doesn't it?
it really, really, really does. But a week before in Martin County, Beargrass, a week before the BBL murders, Audrey Leggett. What about her?
Yeah.
That's so close. That is so close.
Yeah.
They say there's no concrete connection, but I believe there is a connection.
Well, I think anything's possible. I mean, it's such a small town. Well, between Windsor and Beargrass, it's roughly 20, 21 miles, but it's like they're all interconnected, and the whole vibe around Windsor and Beargrass and Martin County, it's all very laid back. I mean, they're just country folks. They're not used to having these kind of things happen.
No, not at all.
Prior to BBL, on May 30th, 1993, Miss Audrey Leggett, I think she was around 66.
She was gunned down as she was working at the counter at Cherry's Cupboard. She was on the phone with her daughter, Judy. I think her daughter said that they were swapping recipes, talking about she was getting a recipe for something.
Mm-hmm.
And her mama told her, hold on, and it went click, and that's the last time she talked to her mama. And then they found out she was dead. I think they drug her to the cooler.
Yeah, she had been. They took her life by shooting her, and she'd been drugged back to the cooler. Um,
Yeah, she was shot several times for a couple $100 that was missing from the register. Hmm.
and then customers would find her.
Yep.
Yeah,
This may not be related at all to the Below murders,
she definitely
but
deserves
yes.
because her family, they've suffered through this loss. And Miss Audrey, she definitely needs her family needs some justice as well. So that's just
Yeah. Imagine being her daughter and basically hearing that, and that's the last thing. I mean, she was there basically.
yeah, that's just mm-mm. That's just it's one of those things that she was found by customers, and it is interesting to know that she Mrs. Leggett was killed with a 22 caliber handgun, while the Below
Found,
murders
yeah,
were with a 45, I believe is correct.
yeah.
So that's
Mm.
that's one of those things that is it's all so close together. It kind of does make you wonder. Um,
Yeah,
could
it
they?
makes you really, really wonder. I mean,
But it's the look of the and the thing of it too. If anybody has any information about this, please contact the North Carolina SBI and let them know that you know anything. Um,
please.
please do, and we'll
Yes,
get that
please put
number for
them,
you.
let the family try to stop their suffering a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll get that number for you. We'll have it up at the end of the podcast. So we go forward in time one week. Okay, and it looks like that would be a Sunday, June 6th, 1993, at approximately 6:15 p.m. A male who they believe was already inside the Below store hiding in Windsor bound up 6 victims using gray duct tape. Um, he also used dog chains, dog collars. He stacked the victims in 3 piles. He
Mm-mm-mm.
uncotted the piles. He killed 3 of the victims. The 4th victim was shot. The 5th victim was stabbed. Both were
What?
left for dead. And the 6th victim, and at least this is in note 6, just so you for your reference. It looks like the 6th victim was not hurt, and he got away with what looks like to be about $3,000. He demand,
Mm-mm-mm.
he demanded that the clerk and the manager put the money in a bag, um, and he had the money. He did keep saying that he was not intending on shooting them. He stated multiple times that he was a former police officer who had been done wrong, um,
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
and that he opened fire. He only had 1 round of ammunition, and then what he couldn't finish with the
he
bullets.
grabbed a knife.
Yeah,
He grabbed a knife.
and finished with a knife.
Yeah, he was evil.
Very much so. So his description is a black male, medium complexion.
30 to 35 years old with a solid, slender build and military style haircut.
Hmm.
And they said he had slender, oh no, I'm sorry, he had light brown slanted eyes with a narrow nose bridge that was possibly caused from a sports injury.
Well, the 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 other thing too, and I'm on note 4 now, is in researching this, the amount of people that were inside the store at closing time. 6 people is a lot of people,
I
and
know. So he must knew he could.
but that's the thing. You would think if he had cased the place out. There's 6 people there. Is that the best time to try and rob somebody? I mean, what I'm getting at is if we go back down to the FBI profile on the guy, okay? Because see, there's 2 definite schools of thought here. One is that he was military trained or an ex policeman, like he said, because he was so cool and calm while he was executing this, according to the survivors. If he was military trained, maybe it didn't matter to
It
him.
didn't. That's what I'm thinking. He was military trained, and he knew, or he thought in his mind that he could handle who was in there.
It's possible.
Maybe he looked at the victims and said they're not going to be that much of a. They're not going to be that much resistance to him.
Yeah, could be. Go over from the notes from the FBI profile what they have profiled him to be. If you would go over that right quick.
What note did you say you're on?
That would be probably in your talking points from that.
Okay, so sorry. Okay.
Notes from the FBI profile.
Okay, profile. He's likely an ex-con who was convicted of a serious felony. Despite this, the suspect was likely a model prisoner, possibly affiliated with a religious group while incarcerated. BBL murders were likely not his first. Very persuasive, possessing a silver tongue. And he displays composure, representing himself with a friendly demeanor. And he possesses a serious threat to family. Poses a serious threat to family and friends. Has ties in some form to the area. African American, dark complexion, mid-30s, very muscular, at least 6 feet tall.
So let's talk about that, and the next thing that we'll go to would be note number 10.
Okay.
We'll go over that next, but let's talk for just a minute the 2 schools of thought here. You've got one. They just think the guy was a drug addict. That he just by happen chance came upon this grocery store, robbed it, and didn't really know what he was doing because there was a lot of sloppiness involved. Okay, then there's and they due to that sloppiness, that's why they say a drug addict. Due to the fact
Okay.
that he probably only had one uh, round of ammunition, and they theorized that because he started using a knife after he had fired so many bullets. And then
Or
the
he
other,
might have wanted to challenge himself if he's,
who knows?
yeah.
And then the other school of thought is that he was military trained or uh, had been trained by the police academy because he did say he was a former police officer,
Yeah.
but none of them recognized him. So
Yep. And he's got, they think, I mean, I remember them saying he has to have family here. He has to have family here somewhere.
well, you figure at that point,
Somebody has got to know.
back then you could go from Virginia through Windsor and Martin County, Bertie, Martin County, like that, to Virginia,
Yeah.
which would have been military. You would have had military here. So there's that possibility. But going back to a couple of points, I know that this was a sloppy crime scene. I get all that. Okay, but when you really think about it, if this guy was trying to travel light and only had one round of ammunition, you know, had he cased this out, did he just happen chance buy it and decide he was going to go for it? We
I
don't
don't
know.
think I think he just he
But
got 3,000 out of it. Now that, like I said, money. I mean,
but
300, 3,000 is not, but he
and,
got money out of it,
and see
and that was a bonus.
a lot of people think, in researching this, they were saying $3,000 is not a lot of money.
Mm,
1993 in a small southern town, $3,000 was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money back then. I remember that. Remember, I was struggling. So, yeah, it was.
And
I would have loved it, but
but
I would have never done anything like that anyway.
well, none of us would. I mean, but do you think, in doing your research, military, police trained, or drug addict?
All three. I think he was military trained, and I think he is a drug addict. I think he's not in the military or in the police business anymore because of his drug addiction, but I think he was trained that way. We've got a lot of them now
Yeah.
that are like that, that are they're trying to either help or they have kicked out.
Well,
And when you kick them out, where does that leave them?
yeah.
They got this knowledge, they can't find this job because of their issues they've got from being in the military. I mean, you go you go overseas, you see stuff, you can't blame you don't then you can't blame them. But then you don't treat them when they come back. You just let them go. And when you let them go, they develop all these issues and nobody helps them. So what do? They do the only thing they do know how to do.
Well, I mean, it's possible. It could be exactly that way. I think, um, and I know they want to rule out some things because of the sloppiness, but I think he was military trained. I think he was moving light on his feet. Um, I think in the profile they said likely an ex-con who was convicted of a serious
Mhm.
felony. I believe that. I believe that he did not want to go to back to prison. And you think about it. If he was in the military, he's regimented. So A would have been B, would have been C. He'd have been
Would have been D. Yep. Mhm.
regimented in prison as well. It's probably one of those things for him to be that calm in that situation, as calm as that we said, that tells you he has been involved in conflict. And
Mhm.
where do you come up on that conflict? You only come up on it in the military, or if you're in the um
Some kind of police field,
that's right.
military, police, something like that.
But if you go back to your talking point on note 10, if you'll notice, one of the survivors, Jasper Hardy Jr. Okay,
Uh huh.
he was watching all this unfold. People above him, people below him, because he's stacked, and he gets asked by the attacker, "Will you identify me?" And he says, "No, man, I don't know you." And then the killer says, "Okay, big man, I'm gonna let you live." Now, moments earlier, he's just watched his brother Thomas, who gave the
Oh.
same answers, and he killed him. So the fear of being caught was there because he kept saying, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to do anything. But he kept going. I don't want to hurt you, but he kept executing, he kept killing.
Mhm.
And I believe that ties in with being formally convicted of a serious felony. Uh,
I think so too.
and, but I just tell you, when you really think about that, there was the possibility, and we're in note 11 now, the possibility that a small white car with Maryland plates was seen speeding off. Um, he could have went in any direction at that point. So I don't know. Could have went in any direction at that point.
I know, but they haven't. If he was in jail, in prison, When they have his DNA, his fingerprints. Didn't they say they got DNA from?
They did say they got DNA, and that's the other weird thing too, is because you, you would think DNA would be all over everything, but
Yeah, they said they got it, and then they said they got it from the other one the week before,
why hadn't anything matched up?
and nothing's matched up.
And it's interesting to note too. Like I was going over back to note 12. uh, If you'll note too, I was telling you about this part too. Belo actually had surveillance cameras.
But they weren't working.
No, they were non-functional at the time. This part of me, I wonder if any of the families ever thought, maybe we need to contact a lawyer, because if you'd have had surveillance up, it wouldn't have prevented this from happening.
But they would know who they were looking for.
But they would have had, some better out.
Hmm. Yeah, that would have been my thought because I'd have been doing everything I could.
Well, let's talk about the victims really quick. Killed were cashier Joyce Coburn Reason. She was 36. She lived in Windsor. The manager, Grover Lee Cecil Jr., was 47, and he was from Aden. The cleaning crew member, Johnny Rankins Jr., 48, of Edenton. Um,
Mm.
Mrs. Reason and Mr. Cecil were shot once in the head, while Rankins was shot in the back. And then the cleaning crew members, Thomas E. Hardy, 48, of Edenton, Sylvester Welch Jr., 40, of Hertford. They were hospitalized in critical condition. What's amazing to me, too, now you think about this. We got 6 people in here. You got Grover, who's the manager, Grover Lee Cecil, that's a man. Johnny Rankins,
Yeah.
man, that's 2 men. Thomas Hardy, Sylvester Welch, that's 4 men. And this guy just nonchalantly walks in and says, "Hey, you're going to do what I tell you to do, and you're going to do it right now," with no
Well,
hesitation.
they said that he might, the FBI profile, that he might possess silver tongue. You know, some people do. I won't hurt you. Like, they possess something. They can about talk you into things.
Well, too, when you're in the military, you especially when you rise up in the ranks, okay, you
Hmm.
you are taught, when you're given authority over another, um, you expect it to happen. When I tell you something, I just expect you to do it. It's so matter of fact. I expect you to, and I believe this is how he was talking to them. So matter of fact, so bold and brazen.
That they surprised them. I
Yeah,
mean, they. And
completely.
how old were these people? 48, 40. Well, they could have, depending on how old he was, they could have probably taken him on, but it depend. He had a gun, so we don't never know in a situation what we would do. We want to live to see our family. We
Yeah.
do what you say. We won't get hurt. That's exactly right. I mean, we don't know. We might be looking for ways to get out, but we don't know.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we could sit here all day long and say what we would do or not do. We don't know. We don't really
We
know.
don't know.
We don't really know. But
I'd
it's
love to think I would fight, but I don't know.
but I do think that he just was very matter of factly about it. And that's why I keep pointing back to the military.
I think that too. I really believe that in my heart. I believe somebody knows. Hey, there's a reason. Might be a conspiracy theorist through and through, but I believe in my heart of hearts, military, ex military, and it all connects somehow.
Well, that's why I keep going back to him being the military. I just, you know, I think that he is a military trained person or a former member of law enforcement, and I do feel like he's probably died. And I think you brought up a good point earlier when you said it's possible that he could be all three. He could have been in the military. He could have been um, trained in law enforcement, and he could have been a drug addict. He could have been all three. Um, that's a very distinct possibility. We don't know.
We don't know, and then these people need to know.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that has gone on for a long, long time. Um,
Yes, it's gone on for a long time.
Interestingly, a year after the Belo murders in Windsor, another Belo store was robbed, and this was back in your talking points email I sent you.
I see that in Hartford, North Carolina.
Yep, and the
He hid
gunman,
in the store.
uh-huh, and he tied the assistant store manager up using duct tape.
And dog leashes, the same items used
Yeah.
to tie the victims in the Windsor store
Now
robbery.
that had to be the same guy
He fled with an undisclosed amount of cash and no one was injured.
because
That was the same guy.
he's already created an MO at this point.
That was this. I wonder if he did it. You know, he had to do it. I wonder why it's not been.
You don't hear a lot about that part of it, but here's the thing: the
He didn't kill anybody. That's why you don't hear about it.
well, see, some of the theories out there is this guy wasn't so much concerned about robbing them as he was killing them, like a serial killer. I don't believe he's a serial killer. I believe was somebody who, well, by proxy, I guess he was a serial killer.
He was here on this one, the first
But
two.
I'm saying I think he needed the money. He enjoyed the thrill of it. Uh, Mentally, psychologically, he felt he could do this crime and get away with it because he's had a history of it.
And I think the first two, he was on drugs. That's why he was acting like he was.
You think?
I think.
But you think he might have been all right in the last one?
No, he's not all right if he's robbing somebody.
I mean, not on drugs because he didn't kill anybody.
I don't know. I don't know. But I do believe he was on the first two.
I think it's the same guy.
I do believe it's the same guy.
Definitely think it's the same.
Definitely the same guy.
And
Definitely.
Obviously there's no surveillance at the that
Why
be
don't they put up surveillance, especially after this happened?
well, I think that might be one of the reasons there's no more Belo stores. But
Because nobody wants to work for them.
yeah, but you you can't rule out the possibility. What if he did case these places out? What if he was aware there was no
He
surveillance?
had to be aware.
I mean, you go. I mean, this is the exact same crime in Hertford. The only difference is that nobody was killed. It's the exact same crime.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's I find that very interesting. I also find it very interesting to you. I'm gonna throw you a curve now because I didn't
Uh-oh.
tell you about this part. So, um, I told you when talking about this that um, he kept referring to himself as an ex-policeman, that he had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interestingly enough, okay, in in February 2008, in Tinley Park, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago,
Yeah.
there was a shooting. 5 people were killed, a sixth was injured, and this particular person went in and to rob them, and he kept telling them that he was a policeman, an ex-policeman with nothing to lose.
Well.
Um, Now he was described as somebody in his 20s,
Oh, that couldn't have been him.
Couldn't have been him. Time frame doesn't work. But don't you find it interesting that I just sent you the email for it so you can pull it up? But don't you find it interesting that that same line gets used in another robbery, what, 14, 15 years later?
Well, it could be. Um,
Now, they pretty much have ruled out a connection there.
oh, they ruled out a connection. They don't think it could be a family member.
Uh, Probably not. It's just interesting that the same terminology was used. So I don't know. I don't know.
Lane Bryant Clothing Outlet.
But see, what makes this thing so unique is you're stacking people. You know, you stack them, and that's just crazy. I mean,
That is very crazy.
and see, my thought process on that is, how did you arrive at that thought process to stack?
That's why that is exactly why. Mm-mm-mm.
I mean, that to me, you dealing with somebody cold and calculated. He's done this several times. I mean, and it's frustrating because you can't really find a whole lot to go on, and you can't really have a way of connecting the dots in other parts of the country to kind of figure out. That's why when I first read about that Lane Bryant thing, I was all over that. But when you look at the composite, it looks
It's nothing like,
yeah. So
wow. That is crazy.
I mean, I don't know. It's just,
It's a little bit crazy.
but um, we had told you guys as we're getting ready to wrap this up here in just a little bit, we'd get you the number for the North Carolina SBI. That phone number is 1-888-624-7222. Again, the North Carolina SBI district office number is 1-888-624-7222, or 919-662-4500. Again, that's 919-662-4500. So if you guys have any information about the Below murders or Miss Audrey Leggett, please contact the proper authorities.
Please do that.
Anything you want to add before we go ahead and wrap this up? Anything we didn't touch on?
Nothing other than if you guys know anything to please, please, please call that number.
Yeah.
Put the families, give them a little bit of closure. I mean, I know it can't bring them back, but it could make them feel better.
And maybe you're listening to this somewhere in another part of the USA, and something happened like this in your neighborhood. Maybe there's some slim chance of connection somewhere. I it's just mighty funny that you have Miss Audrey Leggett a week before, and she's shot, and of course all the things there is, people could say was, whoever killed her, she knew who they were. She walked. That's why they walked in the store. It was so easy. I get all that. I do, but it's just mighty strange that in a mere few days, you have a robbery and a murder on this level at Below. I mean, I just think it's too much of a coincidence. And I do believe the guy, like I said, military. And you know what? Yeah, let's throw that in there. Probably a drug addict too.
Yep, I do believe that.
Yeah. So, well, guys, thank all of you for being a part today. We appreciate you following us and listening. We hope that you'll take us a gander at us on our YouTube channel.
Give us a listen on YouTube and Spotify.
Yep. And soon to be Apple and Google. And again, visit us. We're on TikTok, Bucklesberry Lemonade, YouTube, Bucklesberry Lemonade, again on Spotify, soon to be on Google and Apple. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.